by the knowledge of the amount of data that has been available for humans to comprehend. This defines the choices that are made, and to demonstrate this, I will now let you listen to a small fragment of a radio show called The War of the Worlds, broadcasted in 1968. So I will now play a small fragment of this radio show.
Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater Opera in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
We are speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience? Certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the Natural History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate.
So I think this gave enough the introduction. The radio show is an adaptation of the science fiction novel written by H.G. Wells, and it became famous for causing a panic among its listeners. And you might have noticed it from the fragment. This is because they had constructed the program by using journal-like entrances. So the entire play has been based on this news agent telling how the development of the war against the aliens is continuing. People recognize this as a way of giving and receiving information in such a manner that they lose their sight on recognizing what was true and what was false. And in so, the authoritative power that came from the news industry has shown its physical effect onto people. So apparently a fictional radio show can be powerful enough to confuse his listeners. And the same thing actually happens nowadays when you look at the effect of fake news on the internet, for example. To give another example of how this authority by repurposing works, I've got this slide here. What you see here is a specific color and a specific material, and it might not trigger you personally, but it does for people who live in the Netherlands. This is because this is a close-up of the envelope which is used by the Dutch tax office, the Belastingdienst. The envelope stands for this iconic authoritative power that marks the importance of the letter that you will receive. The letter is so significant for the Dutch tax office that they actually literally repurposed its design online. Its iconic features of the letter, its design is reused in the website which is meant to use the letter. And in so the website actually hints towards this envelope. The color of the gradient blue, the way how the envelope is opened. So you can see a lot of similarities here between the letters. As you can see here even more clearly, they even use the exact placement of the logo, the continuing of the back and the front of the envelope, or it continues on the web page as well.
Sorry, are you changing the slides?
Can I change the light?
No, the slides? Because we can only see the first slide, authority by design.
You can't see the slides.
Maybe share screen again.
I will. It's very unfortunate. Can you now see the movement in the...
Yes, now we can. Yes.
Yep.
That's perfect.
Can you still see it?
Yes, I can still see it. Can you put it full screen, please?
It's full screen at my place now.
Oh.
It's at yours now. Sorry. sorry, let me quickly figure out. I should be able to. Can you now see full screen?
Yes, now it's full screen. Perfect.
That's, well, this is the color and the gradient I was previously talking about.
Yes.
And this is the letter in how it's literally purposed onto the web. So you see the similarities between the two. And here I have, in the way how you can see that the logo is being transported from the back and the front literally into its design. So the people who designed this website have literally looked very carefully at how the letter is designed and how the envelope in its iconic authority power is being brought over to the people who received it. But unfortunately, they failed to reenact the behavior of the receiver online. And that is clearly seen by these pages from start till button. They yet again give a hint towards the envelope that you are awaiting to receive. But where you normally have one step in order to open the envelope and receive the information, here you have 6 steps which you need to undertake, and all these steps are screens with login codes, every time giving you assurance that you can find help, but never really applying it onto its interface. So where you would normally undertake only one step, you're now encountered with several more. To eventually come to this page, which is very extraordinary, because this page is the last page you end up in order to receive a letter. And this letter is actually the exact same copy of the one which you would normally receive on your doormat, only now online. The strange thing of this is that its digital counterpart, which you would normally find on your doorstep, is now in your mailbox. And the idea that this letter is not in your personal home anymore, so it's not invading your space, is what it means to use the social protocols of an analog source, but never being able to apply that onto a digital one. And so these websites start to adjust their design to the social media pages, creating a very vulnerable position. Let's go to the next one. And this same thing happens with newspapers, as I was previously talking about. Let me quickly grab my notes. Yeah, so this tendency can be found anywhere and is prominently sensitive for online news. We have this idea of a definition of what a newspaper is, but over time this has changed. So where normally a newspaper would have been this source of information which can only be ratified with newer edition, and something you hold in your hand, you share with your direct family and friends, this has now changed onto a very long web page. So here you see one of my works which actually shows you the original physical size of a web page. So on the left you see the newspaper, on the right you see the web page of that day printed out. So the idea of something physical that is changed within the newer edition actually loses its ground the moment that it's placed online due to the certain reading protocols that are in order and the social protocols that are in order. These protocols actually create a platform in which certain frictions can coincide, which you normally wouldn't have had in its analog counterpart. And as said previously, this makes these websites very sensitive, and the idea of dismantling these websites actually create an opportunity to yourself to find these protocols. One of the things that I, for example, immediately saw was the purpose of an image online. And by taking away its clickbait, the website becomes less prominent and you feel as if it's a far more trustworthy source of information. And here is another example of how online news pages have changed over the years from something which was very similar to an analog newspaper with no social aspects, not that many images, and actually only articles of that day showing actually the date of when it was published, which you don't have right now anymore. So a lot of online news sources have removed the dates of their articles. And in this example, you can actually see how the idea of a social protocol has been embedded into the design of these web pages. So when you ask people which website they trusted more, they would actually come to the websites who were based on Facebook profiles. So these websites will be far more trustworthy than the websites such as this one and this one, which are the major Dutch online news publications. And fake news websites know this. So what they do is they use the design of Facebook, the social aspect of the online, the idea that you can only find trustworthy information with your friends and your family, and they copied it onto their websites, which actually ends up with all these websites who view as a trustworthy source of information, even though they have copied the protocols that previous newspapers have used online. And this is an artwork which is trying to react on it, and the literal sentence of it is actually that we have become so indoctrinated with the protocols that we aren't able to look through the transformation of information anymore. And we get lost or in true and false purely by the inclination of an article's design. It's suggestive design, actually. And this work reflects a dogma of that idea that nowadays everything fits a square, and that we lose our ability to think critically in this abundance of well-designed information. And the weird thing about this idea of well-designed information is that people actually don't really mind. This is the Dutch governmental news organization, NOS, which has won a prize for its state-of-the-art digital communication. They use the platforms and they use the language of the certain platform in order to transport information to those who are willing to listen and to look at it. And if you don't understand Facebook, why won't you use our Instagram? Why won't you use our more elaborate YouTube videos? So they're actually using it as a type of branding rather than really thinking about how certain people consume certain information and how sensitive they are for this design of a platform. So one of the questions that I continuously ask people is, do you share your truth or not? The moment that you choose for this idea of a social capital, in which you decide that what you share is a part of your identity, you share something that you define as your truth. And what if your Facebook would not say, what did you do today, but would literally ask you the question, what truth do you want to share today with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues? Then you start thinking very differently about how information nowadays is spread by the internet, as you being an autonomous source and spreading your information as a stranger to someone else who then elaborates on it further and further and further until it actually organically grows on its own. And it's not new to us. So this idea of reading previous people is something you also see in books. For example, this is a book I took out of the library here in Goldsmiths last week, and it was completely marked with people who previously read the book. And very unconsciously, you are reading what they marked rather than reading the whole story. The same thing actually happens online, where algorithms are reading the text for you, or reading who read it before you, and then adjust the text. Just as I said before, newspapers are adjusting their text, but not saying when it's posted or how many times it's been rectified. So you actually never really know who you're reading. Are you reading yourself, or are you reading someone else's algorithm that kind of fits yours in some way. So one of the things that I want to give those who look at my work and who listen to my talks is that you should think it's easier to react with emotions rather than to react critically, and that you really need to start thinking about the screen that you're sharing. Because every screen contains its own truth. And is it yours? And which platform is your most favorite one? And why? Does it have a certain form of communication you really like? And why do you like that design and that type of communication? And does this platform actually have its roots into a previous analog source? Or has it always been online? Because this actually also defines how its information is rooted. And how the translation of its repurposing has been conducted. So in my opinion, the act of sharing in which you define what is your truth really depends on the place and the item with what you're sharing it. And that truth might come out to be completely different than you actually think by the use of the materials, by the use of the companies that you are using in order to transfer your information to another person. One of the reactions of me upon this you can find on my website, in which I made a hyperlink adventure that engages you to these social platforms and to really go through this travel and get the experience of, do I actually know how these social protocols work? Do I actually know how sensitive I am for my own social capital? And can I read between the lines of those pages? And I can now show you how this idea of scrolling through works. As you get two options on the website, and you can choose to continue the hyperlink adventure. You first end up on Elo, a platform which is seen as the most private platform, something that doesn't use commercials, and it's mainly habited by artists who share and show their work on these web pages. And what you can do is actually click further and go to another link. And then you end up on Medium, a platform which is used for self-publication of stories and papers. So the reading protocol here, again, is differently due to its design of being more academic. And then onto Google, again, a more self-publishing platform, which is really used in the idea of being more blog-like. So the messages here most of the time are far more family-like. They're more intertwined into your very personal environment rather than Medium, who makes a lot of use of professionals. And you can see that my friend had a hard time getting on these channels. So this is Pinterest, a media which is actually makes actually a lot of use of images. So what you here have are links to articles by the use of an image. So rather than seeing the text, you are encountered with an image, and it shows you images which are alike. And yet again, my friend had a hard time figuring out how she could go through these web pages and where she could actually find the next step to go to. This is academia. It's actually used by a lot of academia people. If you don't have an account, it's really hard to get your information, but you are able to find it eventually. She was rather quick. The person who actually did this may be important to tell. She's an artist herself, but she hasn't used that much of online media, only the major ones. So all these platforms were quite new for her, and she really needed to quickly go through the web pages. Tumblr is much more known by her as well. And web page which yet again actually makes far more use of images rather than of text. to go onto YouTube. Where people make use of moving image texts. In this one you can't hear it because the sound is turned off, but you actually hear me reading the article as you follow the translation. MySpace, not that used anymore, used to be a very big platform for musicians. Makes, again, a lot of use of images and music. LinkedIn, the professional page. Also very interestingly, because a lot of people are self-publishing on this platform, and the articles which you can find are mostly based on businesses. And so it actually continues to go through the entire paper. Instagram, SoundCloud, Twitter, Facebook, to eventually actually end up on my blog again. So what I want to tell with you is to really go through it, try to recognize the social protocols that are in use on these web pages, and try to see what your direct relationship is to them. And experience this quick, briefly experience, whereas the information which is actually written in the same language becomes far different as you read it on several protocols. So you are able to go through this hyperlink adventure yourself by just going to the website www.authoritatebydesign.com. You can also Google it, find it. The first link starts on the homepage, the hyperlink adventure. And you can also read my research on there. If you enter the website, you can scroll through the blog pages, see all the other images that I made that are accompanied with the research, and also read a PDF version of it if you're not that used of using all the social protocols. And thank you for listening, and feel free to ask me any questions if you have.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I have a question.
Do it. Ask me.
Are you presenting this again, like in London, or is this gonna be your presentation for your graduation project that is very interesting? I think it would be very nice to show it in other locations.
I presented this work in a few locations in the Netherlands, whereas I made quite a large wooden installation in which you had this feeling of the abundance of information, seeing the web pages for real, getting this idea of that eye that is always watching you. And I'm now doing my master's in Goldsmiths on sociology. I have a specialty in software studies. So what I want to do is to continue researching this project, because for me personally,